So I've only tried this about 130 times, but we're going to try to get into it again. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about the economical impact of artificial intelligence as it relates to replacing human workers in those various spaces that it probably will. Now, a lot of the businesses aren't there yet, but there's a little bit of rumor going around that some businesses aren't hiring as many people as maybe they might have at this time this year because they see that on the horizon, and if not already in their particular spheres, you have artificial intelligence agents being put together designed specifically to replace human workers. I think we can all kind of agree with that. And maybe some people out there that saying AI is going to end us all by itself because it has its own abilities and its own goals and these sorts of things. Maybe. But ultimately, I think we're going to probably do some damage with ourselves when it comes to the application of artificial intelligence. Now, right now, everybody's saying if you're in a business and you're worried about losing your space in that business, that you just need to update your skill set, need to become better in the artificial intelligence space, understand how to work with it better and use it to actually make your current job better. Then others are saying, well, you need to take it, you need to become a creator. You need to go from where you are currently, because you, of course, never thought of that before. You thought working 40 hours a week, 80 hours every 2 weeks, 120 hours a month, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 hours a year was the best way, besides sitting and maybe vacationing on some tropical island, because you came up with all these fantastical ideas and figure out how to sell and monetize them. But because you haven't figured that out, we're going to help you, because AI is here and it's going to be able to bridge the gap from, well, you wanting to work 40 hours a week, which apparently is what you love, to actually saving yourself and becoming a creative entrepreneur. And then a lot of people are talking about vibe coding. What is vibe coding? Well, programmers, they're probably going to be displaced a lot, and that price range is $250 to $300,000 a job for that particular type of employment. Programmers, coders, people that are very good at putting together that language, organizing it in such a way that you can do things with it. Web apps, websites, funnel pages, CRMs, all these other fancy things that businesses use. You use stuff to take care of your expenditures, those reports, build websites. People come to me very often and they ask me to put together architectures for their business. That'll include CRMs, voice agents, all these different sorts of things. Well, pretty soon, in fact, right now, they call it vibe coding. There's nowhere I have to go now to be able to make that for my businesses, for the people that are trusting me with trying to add on to their business. I get to do it myself, having never written a line of code. We used to program when I was growing up, but it was a lot different than the current skill set required to be able to program in Python or these other languages today. It's a whole thing. But the computer, well, artificial intelligence, it's very good at coding, it turns out. And because it has all the background, all the language, all the history, all the data, it's not bad at continuing to learn how to program. And now we see, as us as human beings that might be in that space, I no longer have to make a phone call or hire somebody to build something. I build it myself. I call it into existence using language via vibe coding. I'll sit there and I'll say, I have this problem. I have a business that I work for that has this problem and they need a solution. What do you think? And then it says, well, I think that you could probably attack it this way. And then if I want to know more, I'll go into more deeper research, and then I'll read this, 20, 30 page document that just researched 250 different websites, and it'll give me solutions. Then from that, I package the best one that I think. And in some cases, even the LLM itself, the large language model, the ChatGPT, the Grok, the Claude, these types of large language models, they'll even tell me, well, why don't we just build an app for that? Why don't we build a website? Why don't I build a funnel page? Why don't I build something that's going to solve this problem? I say, well, why don't we? And about 10 minutes later, it spits out a couple thousand lines of code. I take that and I run it in VS Code. I do a little work on it. I make it so it's SEO and AEO and AIEO and GEO optimized. I make sure it's nice and tight. I make sure it's mobile responsive. I make sure it has a schema in there and all sorts of different tenets that make it more findable online by the large language models and even the basic web search engines out there. And then I look at it, it's beautiful, it's everything that I want. Maybe I don't like the color scheme. Maybe I ask, can we make this a little bit better? And it does it. Maybe it doesn't flow right. Maybe the blocks are off. Maybe there's an 8 block architecture and I want 9 because you get 3 by 3, right? A grid of 3 by 3, but there's one missing. So I say, let's put another block there. Let's make it this. So it spits it out again. It comes out. And then if I'm know a little bit about where to insert code, it can either make it all for me again, or it can just give me that piece to swap out. I take that and I stick it into almost like a word processor for code, which is VS Code, where you can do manipulations and changing. And I dump it in there and I ask it, hey, swap this out. And it does. And there we are. And there's the program. And I take that and I run it online. I use Netlify. First, I get it over to GitHub, which is happy to send it to GitHub, which is basically, that's like the storage of it. That's you basically put it in that system. And then that's where the index file, the index.html file, is stored in that particular repository. And then from there, it goes to Netlify, which is what you would think it just gets published online. So there that is. And then you do some domain name configuration and you point the C name and A name, and depending on what else you're going to be doing with it, mail or whatever. But then you get all that set up, and then they go to honorailabs.com and boom, there you have it. So that's vibe coding kind of in a nutshell. So they expect all of us to start becoming vibe coders and start putting things together. And you know what? That's going to be great. I really think there are a lot of people out there that have some fantastic ideas and they're going to make this happen. I do believe that. They see a problem and they attack the problem. They get something to fix the problem, and they publish that. And then lo and behold, you're, being invited by Sam Altman for, to have $500 million and to work for his company. Okay, good for you. That's perfect. Now, the rest of us, the other people that might not have the wherewithal of the people up at the top in the AI space, maybe we came from a long line of some other kind of endeavor. Maybe we were out protecting and serving people, maybe protecting the country. Maybe we're now at this particular point where we're wondering, I wonder what's going to end up happening. Well, let me kind of give you a rundown. I kind of like to play this like innings. Inning number 1, inning number 2, baseball game, 9 innings, right? Kind of typical thing. When's the most dangerous part of a baseball game? When does stuff kind of get critical? The bottom of the 4th. It's always the bottom of the 4th, the beginning of the 5th. So if we look at every inning as if we have a 10% addition of job loss, inning number 1, 10% of humans displaced from the labor market, replaced by artificial intelligence. Now, it's not necessarily they get like replaced one for one. It could be that a company says, well, I'm going to start bringing in some AI architecture to the company. And that being the case, Johnny really doesn't need to do what he did because Johnny works in front of a screen all day long, kind of like these screens here. That's what Johnny does. He doesn't have to go out and fight people. He doesn't have to go out and defend people. He doesn't have to go out and investigate crime or dig ditches or whatever it may be. Johnny sits in front of a terminal all day and bangs into a keyboard. Well, I'm going to automate Johnny's job. So there's going to be some of that. But what the companies are going to realize is Johnny works a couple thousand hours a year. AI is going to work in excess of 102,000 hours a year because there's no vacations, no days off. Also, AI is going to potentially save them from additional internal lawsuits. It's not going to be at the water cooler slapping somebody's ass or saying something even less evasive, saying something that's taken out of context, or maybe the context was there and you still have a lawsuit that exists. Either way, doesn't matter. But AI is probably not going to do that. There's not going to be a sexual harassment issue. So you have that. Then you remove the need for some kind of medical insurance. So now you pull that off of that. Now, Johnny's not looking so good to the company because the AI doesn't stop after 8 hours, doesn't call in sick, doesn't need holidays off, doesn't have a kid's soccer game coming up that he has to go to. The AI is all in. So if you have that kind of work expansion and Johnny no longer has a job, well, that's a problem with Johnny. I'm just taking Johnny as an example because there's going to probably be a lot of Johnnies. How do we fix the Johnnies of the world, including yours truly and yours truly? How do we fix all of that? So there's a few thought experiments out there regarding how this happens. Now, we could wait until we get to the bottom of the fourth, beginning of the fifth inning, and let the powers that be make their particular adjustments, there's going to be a lot of pain in that sector. Now, this is if this really goes through. I might be wrong. All of what people are talking about, the pending job loss, the current graduates that aren't really being hired because businesses, again, buy a screen, and they all have good ideas, of course, and they're all neuroplastic. Their brains move and morph very easily. Where I'm sitting here at 56 and, putting on my socks is a challenge. But understanding the way that this seems to be panning out I might not be. I might be in the right space, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope this is just one of those ridiculous videos and they play it in the future and they say, oh my God, this bald guy, he's nuts. Never happened. But if it goes this way, we have 10% job loss in the first inning, maybe within the next few months. And this is very quick going to happen, however it's going to play out. Only because we're talking about intelligence scales. Intelligence is the reason why we've had every past revolution. Now, it wasn't general intelligence, it was something discovered, which intelligence discovered. Whether it was, Einstein's theory of relativity, there was intelligence that discovered that. By whom? Well, Einstein, pretty smart fella, I would guess. Probably in the 160s as far as IQ, people say, and that's right up there. That's genius. Where's AI on that spectrum? If we were going to measure it by that same standard, way above that. But there's a lot of other tests that humans can't even qualify for that AI is able to perform on. So that ship has already left the building, or Elvis has already left. So here we are. But we have 10% job displacement, 20%, the second inning, 30%. What ends up happening with that? Well, it gets to a point where, doing the thought experiment, people aren't going to be able to pay for services. They're not going to be able to pay their mortgages. I don't know if it's going to go all of a sudden. They're not going to be able to pay their taxes. They're going to stop because they're going to need money to eat. And there's probably going to be some costs increase, although you watch a lot of the AI channels out there, they're saying, well, there's going to be an abundance of food. Good for them. I think those people are in a whole different sector as far as income and money and investments, because that's what they talk about. They talk about how they own stock in all these companies, how they get glimpses of things before they actually hit the public sector, and they're allowed to invest in them early. And if these things are like, cold fusion, or, figuring out how to make a microchip that doesn't raise any heat, or, whatever that might be, they're kind of seeing it because they're on that edge. We're over here, wondering where our next meal is going to come from. They're over here on the edge. And that's fantastic. They don't talk a lot about that, but, they do a lot of YouTube videos talking about how they're going to, everything's going to be just fantastic. I don't know if it's going to be fantastic for the rest of us. I don't know if it's going to be fantastic for the people that are kind of the afterthought, the people that are out there wondering what's going to happen, because there are ways to fix this now. There are ways to fix this before we get to the bottom of the fourth or the fifth inning. Now, if we get to that point, there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering all the way there. I would think that people will probably not be paying mortgages anymore because they need food to eat. I would think that the banks probably wouldn't be able to foreclose anymore because of just the sheer number. I would think the police are going to be so busy doing other things, they're probably not going to have a foreclosure arm with the sheriff's department that's going to go pull people out of their houses. I would think that they would also maybe be a little bit kinder because their entire family is probably going through the same thing. While the people designing up at the top, they're probably going to be okay. They probably have their bodyguards. They probably don't do any public speaking because it's dangerous. It'd be really dangerous at that point. You probably have some other people that are out there trying to tear down the machine. So that hasn't started yet, but that probably will. And here we go. So we're at the numbers that the government's currently showing us seem to be pretty good. People are more employed now than they've ever been. Does that continue to go? Are we being given the truth as far as those numbers go? Because you watch a few YouTube videos, and again, social media is completely designed around your piss off points, your anger points. It's right there. So if videos about monkeys irritate me, I'm going to see a lot of videos about monkeys. If I can't stand cats, yeah, they're right there. If I love certain things, it's going to be there, maybe at a smaller percentage, because the emotional bond isn't really there. But the people that are putting together all of our social media feeds, swiping up for hours, well, they use AI to do that. So that being the case, they're making adjustments just for Connor McIver, just for me to see. How do we fix it? If we continue on the path, if the path is really certain and this is the way it's going to go, once we get enough people that can't pay taxes or mortgage, going to have to be a different kind of a model. Right now, floating flops, floating. I do this all the time. I don't know why that one's so hard to remember. Floating points operations per second, flops. Floating points operation per seconds. Yeah. What is that? Beats the hell out of me. But it's something that these large language models do. It's kind of the processing power or speed, I guess. And I guess there's a way to kind of tax it. Now, I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea. I don't know how that works out, but the tax on flops, on these floating point operational things, and again, correct me in the comments, just clear it all up, but if they were to tax that at a certain rate, like 0.00001%, and I know it doesn't sound like much, right? If somebody's going to tax me a yearly basis off of that much of a dollar, take it. But I don't know if that's the same mindset with AI. I don't know how much that is, if it's a lot or a little. It sounds like a very little, but it could equate to trillions of dollars. Well, that would solve the national debt. And then if we're going to be replaced, and that would solve all the defense, that would solve all of that, that would solve all the welfare state, that would fix all of those things. At least from the limited research I did as a motor cop here in front of my machine, ex-motor cop. Anyway, so that looks like that would fix that. So it looks like that might be doable, but maybe there are people talking about it. I'm not seeing them in my feed. I'm seeing pissed off cats and monkeys. Okay. Now, from there, you have an employee. Well, let's go back to Johnny. Johnny was replaced. AI replaced him. Well, in order for that company to actually replace Johnny with AI, there would have to be some kind of a fail-safe over this, so they wouldn't say, well, Johnny sucked, that's why we got rid of him. But in truth, Johnny really was replaced with AI, so now we're going to offer Johnny this. Everything he was making, all the healthcare, all that stuff. And that's easily paid because the AI that we brought in to replace Johnny does 53 times as much work because it never shuts off. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 355 days a year. And we still need Johnny to make money. Why? Because Johnny needs to buy services and goods. So we can't stop by starving people and getting rid of their ability to buy services and goods. Sure, you can print all the money you want. You could try to do that. But we've done that. We did that during COVID. And to continue that process, I don't think it's going to make out very well. Now, here's the other dilemma. Johnny gets money now. Johnny gets everything he made. Johnny's at home. What's Johnny going to do? So people talk about that. What's going to happen when the human being doesn't really have that self-worth of going to a job and working 40 hours a week and getting shit from their boss and shit from everybody else and going in there and just grinding through to be able to get home and crack open a cold beer and just be the head of their household and sit there. I don't know if that's really a hard thing to solve. I would probably learn how to do calligraphy. Yeah, that'd be good. Are those little animals, the origami things? I think I would probably like to do that. And hiking Yosemite, definitely. Going to the Redwood Forest, did it burn down? I don't remember. But going there, I think that would be lovely. So I think I could figure out other things to do, maybe travel if we're allowed to, but at least hiking might not be bad. Definitely wouldn't be spent watching television or scrolling or swiping or watching social media. But right now, AI is coming up with virtual worlds, other you know universes. You slap on the headset and you've seen some movies like that probably. I don't know, those might be entertaining. I'm sure they're incredibly addictive. That's something else that hasn't even ventured out in the world. But and then you have the chemical compounds that might put you into some kind of a sleep state. You live 15 lives in an 8-hour period all the way through each one. Kids, raising them, death, the whole 9 yards all the way through. That's something else if you've seen the movies. And yeah, so there's probably a lot to do more than work. I think it's just making the adjustment going from work to non-work, going from a labor economy to an economy of abundance. And then they talk about how prices are going to come down to almost nothing. Energy will be practically free. This whole thing's going to have to be rethought by everybody. There's going to be major psychological impact on a lot of the world, even if this is done seamlessly and correctly. Trying to go from somebody that's worked, you see it with retirement. Police officers, they retire and they're dead within 2 or 3 years. Firefighters are the same way. And I don't know what it is. It's not like they're dying unhealthy. Well, maybe in some cases they are unhealthy. But I don't know if it's them having done something for 30 years, 35 years, unable to make the adjustment not to have to do anything anymore. I, I would travel. I would hike. I would learn how to write with my left hand, for God's sake. I would maybe start a kickball camp. I don't know, something. Try to teach kids how to survive this horrible world in some cases. And in some cases, great world. But, how to better function. Why not that? There's a lot to be given back in that regard. Doesn't all have to stop. That's going to be up to us. But up until that point, with all the extra income that could be generated by a singular AI replacement, I think there's plenty there to take care of that person and 11, 12, 15 other people. And they still have another 38, 40 people that AI is doing the work of, in addition to that person. Then you have no insurance. You have no potential lawsuits for sexual harassment, right? You got all that workplace crap. That's all goes away because it's all AI systems. So then you add the physical arm to it, the robots and these other things that are doing very well. And yeah, and that looks kind of like a utopia. Getting to that point is going to be painful. What happens if jobs are replaced? And if you think for a second, is it possible that some of these big corporations are going to say, well, no way we're going to lay off 500 people, even though if we replaced 500 people tomorrow, oh my God, I don't even know the math. Each person, 53 times more producing versus AI. I don't know what that looks like on a scale, but that's probably a lot more money if there are still people to purchase the service or the product. But without the people paying in, the whole system collapses. So the people at the top, the Musks, the Altmans, and again, I'm just an LAPD motor cop, or just a real estate, or just an AI growth architect, or whatever it is I am now. But I think the people running the game, the Altmans of the world, the Musks of the world, the Gates of the world, there's those people. The Anthropic cat. Dark Helmet. He looks just like Darth Helmet. He's going to hate me. If he ever sees this, he'd be upset. But he looks like Route Moranis in Dark Helmet, the Spaceballs franchise. Anyway, that being said, Anthropic said about 80% of their wealth is going to go somewhere to help people that are maybe displaced by AI. I think I saw that the other day. I don't know, do they stick it in a bank account and then everybody gets a credit card or some kind of withdrawal card? I don't know. I don't know how all of that works. I think maybe somebody in position should start maybe explaining this, because if AI is indeed our replacement, and if you look at these big AI companies that are making millions of agents trained to do certain things out there in the people that sit in front of screens all day long world, I think maybe the people that are going to be most displaced should at least be given a plan B or have things explained to them. This is how this transition is going to work. And I think they should start now, because most of us are wrapped up around our job being the center of the world, besides family and love and kids and all that other stuff. But because you earn income, you take that away, and you take it away and people have to fight for food and fight for life and fight to survive. Well, that's a whole thing. But if you take it away and give them what they need to survive, that mental stuff kind of needs to be talked about now. Because take it from me, you know this as well as I do. You're trying to lose 10 pounds. Good luck with that. If we can't just keep the food from entering our mouth for a little while enough to lose some weight, do you really think we're going to deal with it when the price of admission to live this life is just getting a check and that's it? Do you think people are really going to understand that? Are they going to be able to actually go and expand their minds and become better human beings? Or is this going to be more time to, talk about the idle hands of the devil's work sort of a thing? How is it going to play out? I think the whole world is going to have to be retooled and retrained up to a particular point. So what's the answer? Don't know. I don't know if anybody is in these conversations. I haven't seen videos like this in my feed. I know the inning concept baseball. I get that. I'm a big baseball fan, but you have the first inning about 10%, second inning 20, third inning 3%, bottom of the fourth you're getting close to 50%. 50% for 40%, that's kind of that point where the banks become powerless to be able to enforce foreclosures. But that's a big number up until that point that they will enforce. So those people no longer have a place to live. How does it work? What's going to end up happening? And there's only so many military, there's only so many police officers to do whatever their bidding happens to be. But there's going to become a point where those people that have been hired to enforce the law, take it from me, they're going to see people starving, and it's going to be real to them. They're going to probably have family that's in a very similar circumstance because they went from some CEO corporate executive job and they were told 2 years ago, well, you should be a plumber because plumbers are going to be the last to be replaced. But we're going to have billions of robots walking around pretty soon. Pretty soon? Yeah, pretty soon. Couple years, maybe 3. I mean, there'll be a bunch probably by the end of this year. We'll probably see them at the supermarkets with people. That'll be a weird thing. It was already a weird thing seeing those little carts with the little light on it driving around food to people in Santa Monica and San Francisco and LA and everywhere. It's weird seeing a car without a person without a car in it driving it. Yeah, I know. I'm aging, but you know what? You hold on for 3 or 4 years, we'll have reached escape velocity, and you won't have to age anymore. For every year you live, you'll turn back the clock a couple of years, and then you'll be in your 20s again, and then you'll be able to live probably an infinite amount of time. How does that look? And then finally, I'm going to close with this: something else that might not have been talked about much in the circles you're in. What if they solved breast cancer tomorrow? Let's just talk about one cancer, breast cancer. There's a lot of money in breast cancer. If they come up with a cure for breast cancer tomorrow, does that hurt or help the economy? I mean, they cure it. This is the cure. This is it. We can mass produce this. There won't be any more breast cancer. Everybody that has it will go in complete remission and all done, just with one injection, one pill, one whatever. That's not too far from possibility. Solving math this year, solving physics this year, having answers to questions that I can't even imagine what that would look like. But that's a big deal, and that's probably going to happen this year, 2026. Where does it all go? I think we need to be retrained. I think all of us need to have some kind of therapy to get ready for this, because, and maybe I'm wrong. I tell people this all the time. I feel like the guy standing out of the corner with those big pieces of plywood with the little shoulder straps in there. It's painted. The end is near. I'm swinging a bell. I don't think it's going to end us. I don't think AI is going to remove all of us from the planet because we're in their way when it establishes its own goals. I hope it's going to treat us like a caring mother. But to get there, if people aren't thinking about the adjustment cycle, it's going to be rough. We have been conditioned. We can get conditioned quickly to another way. We just need to see that clear and present way. We have to see the pathway laid before us. Is it going to be this universal basic income with whatever negative that could bring with it? Is it going to be enough to survive, or is it going to be we're going to be living just like in Blade Runner in a small little apartment in some 500-story building somewhere? How is that going to look? And I think we should have a real serious talk about this, about what's going to be happening to the world. And if you think it's going to be 10 or 15 years from now, which I still hear some experts saying, we're right there. AGI was years away last year. Now it's probably this year. I think that's what Sam Altman said. Artificial superintelligence, a couple years. That's beyond my level. Within the next few months, any large language model you use, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, I don't know if anybody's using that, Claude, Grok, did I say ChatGPT? Yeah. Whichever one, you're probably not going to be able to tell much difference. They're all kind of settling down and coming to that common denominator of people. It's going to be like there's Apple people, and then there's non-Apple people, the Android people. The Android people kind of like to do things themselves. They don't like to be told what to do. They don't like to have it given to them like the people think they should have it given to them. They don't like it served up. They like it, was it carte blanche? I don't know. Meal for meal, like each piece, a la carte. That's what they like. They like a la carte. The Apple people, they kind of like a plate that's already been made. It's got all the stuff on it. That's what they like. They kind of tell me what I like. I don't mind the Apple. I'm good. I'll go with that. But two different people. Is that the way it's going to be with the large language models, the LLM systems out there? Are they going to start catering to that? Or is it going to come down to them being so incredibly smart, so way above us, they're going to be able to just give it a few moments, a few specific questions, and maybe look into our email streams or our Google Docs file, or just having heard us talk into our phone, because the phone's always listening. All these little devices we have, TVs, they're always listening. So that being the case, isn't just going to say, oh, Connor's new to the platform. Let's do a little research on Connor. And then it starts talking as if it thinks I want to be heard, and it responds in that way. And here we are. Anyway, there's so much to unpack. If you have any guidance, please share. I'm Connor with Honor. We will see you in the next one. And connorwithhonor.com. I think that'd be a good place to start. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and be safe.